Hello! In this video, we're making a T-Rex exhibit with a baby T-Rex nursery and a Rex nest.
It's the Rex nest.
The build starts with this roundabout that we're gonna give a cool educational kind of decoration for our guests to enjoy, and it's also gonna serve as an introduction to the main two attractions, which are visiting the baby Rex nursery and visiting the Rex nest itself. So guests go around this roundabout and they can then go to the left or to the right depending on which attraction they want to go to first. This design does use my monorail roof idea, which if you don't like that or if you don't want to go through this trouble, totally understandable, then you can just skip that, but I personally really like the indoor feel that it creates, and it felt very appropriate, especially for the nursery, which I thought should have like an overhead structure to begin with. So I just extended that, created like this tunnel of monorail pillars, and I feel like the end result of that is really cool, feels really different, and it's very enclosed. It really separates this attraction from the rest of the park, because you do have to imagine these builds as part of a greater park, right? So you can just use this as the main attraction and build stuff around that, and I hope that that's exactly how it's going to serve for you as inspiration. Obviously, we need to lay path under the arches so our guests can go from one end to the next. What we're going to do on the far left is the nursery. On the far right is going to be the start of an interesting underground tour towards the Rex nest, and I also decided to put a viewing gallery just right in the middle so people could view the exhibit itself. But this is like the main structure that I'm going with, and here you go with placing the Hyperloop like tour start station. I really liked using this building because, as you can see when you look through the tunnel, it like almost closes off the tunnel, which again just adds to that feeling that this is actually a proper enclosed roofed space. You can see how it just really fills in that open arch, and I added some trees as well, again just to block it off even more. So that's on one side. On the other side, what I'm working on here is the nursery, and I'm using these like lines of path just as a guideline for placing the monorail at an even distance every single time. And you can see that I'm extending out to the left, which I'm gonna delete later. But that's just so I can get the monorails super close together. If I didn't do that and was trying to start a new one at the very end of the previous one, they would snap together. So that's a neat little trick. Personally, I really wanted the nursery to be a building, so if you are hesitant about using the monorail tracks as roof, I do recommend that you use it at least for this little space, so that the baby T-Rexes are, you know, protected from the elements and they can grow up safely. And to turn that into a guest attraction, I thought was just a really cute idea, and you could totally imagine how that would be one of the main, most popular attractions in a park, to be able to get so close to baby T-Rexes. I'm placing down these low Malta wall pieces to separate the guests from the dinosaurs. And, you know, guests would just stand on that bit of path and look out at the, you know, the baby T-Rex is just frolicking about, living their best life. Now, at the moment, this section is quite wide. It's like really T-shaped at the moment. I'm gonna narrow it down greatly because, there you go, because I just couldn't figure out what I would need such a big space for, so I just made it the width of the central tunnel. I suppose that's what we're gonna call it. Now what we want to do is we want to separate the baby T-Rexes from mommy and daddy in this regard, right? Because obviously our guests can get close to baby T-Rexes, but they're not supposed to get too close to mommy and daddy. So that is why this area is being fenced off to, you know, keep the baby T-Rexes in, keep mommy and daddy out. And really, with this idea, you can go two routes, right? You could go with the route that Rexes are caring parents, and that they would be around this area very often, you know, that they would be right outside this area, keeping an eye on their kiddos. Or you could go the opposite way. You could pretend that T-Rexes aren't very caring parents, and that actually the baby Rexes need to be protected from the parents. Either way, I made it so the parents can't go into the nursery section by creating like this really narrow entry and blocking it off further with the light pillar, so, you know, the Rex physically can't get through. And also the invisible fences, which keep out the big T-Rexes, but the small ones, because they don't have the implant that interacts with the invisible fence, the babies can still go through. Now these lights that I'm placing here, we're going to change the color of these to like a super warm orange, and that is because they're meant to represent heat lamps to keep the baby T-Rexes nice and warm and comfortable and healthy. Obviously, you know, the whole idea here is that it's not just an attraction, it's also supposed to serve an actual function of taking care of the animals, you know, aimed towards animal welfare. So little details like that I thought was good to add. Here I'm just realigning the path under the monorail arches because it wasn't perfectly centered, and it really needed to be. That sort of stuff is important to me. I've actually done a build for the T-Rex as part of this exhibit speed build series before. I really like that build, by the way. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out, as well as all of the other builds in that series. But yeah, I wanted to do another one for the T-Rex because now we have the Moros Intrepidus, and the Moros Intrepidus is just the perfect little baby T-Rex. Like, it's a little too small, maybe. Like it's a day one hatchling, but it's just so cute. Alright, so what we're gonna work on now is the decoration or the educational little scene in the middle of this roundabout. And what we're doing here is we're making a fake T-Rex nest so that our guests can like get really close to it, really see the work that a T-Rex would have, you know, put into it, digging a little bit of an indent, creating a little wall around it, putting rocks around it, like a little protective barrier, that sort of stuff. And this is just the way that I create nests in the game. Not just for T-Rex, but I've also done this for sauropods several times. And I just think it's a super cute little detail to add to your animals to make them come a little bit more alive, give them a little bit more of a life cycle and a story. So this is like the basic nest design that I've reused several times. But for this specific one, this one is fake, right? This one is a decoration for our guests to see. Obviously, we're also going to be making a real Rex nest in the habitat itself, but because the real Rex nest would be protected by the parents, guests can't get really close to that one. So that's what sparked the idea to use a mock nest to fill up this empty space in the roundabout, right? And let people see the Rex nest this way. Now I'm using, I deleted a pillar, I don't like that. I'm using these signs for the T-Rex pretty much all over the place. I always forget to use these signs. I guess that comes from the disappointment that we don't have all species. But yeah, I need to not forget to use these signs whenever I do build something for a species that we have a sign for. Now, I'm just lining the entire thing with this, with these concrete barriers. I just feel like that finish it is off way more, and I ran into an issue where when I tried to delete one of the barriers, I accidentally deleted one of the monorail roof arches, and I had a bit of a sweat because I couldn't fit it back in there, but I managed to get there in the end. But that little moment had me posting on Twitter, my kingdom for an undo key, like that moment right there, because I could already envision that I basically had to delete half of that monorail roof to get to like fix that little mistake. What I'm doing now is I'm like lining the enclosure itself, and it is an absolutely huge habitat. I don't usually do this. I usually keep habitats quite small so I can fit more into a single map, into a single park. But for this idea, I really wanted to go with a huge habitat that allows the T-Rexes to lead a more natural life. You know, you'd imagine that a large theropod like T-Rex would have a large territory. So that's what I wanted to give them in this habitat, so they can move around a lot as they would do in nature, or at least, you know, some approximation thereof. because that's what this habitat is about, right? It's about the animal welfare side of it, because when animal welfare is done right, then the animals are more likely to breed, stuff like that. So there's like a philosophy that went into this one. If you're gonna do something like this in your own parks, this might be using a little bit too much space for your liking, but you can either shrink it down a little bit or combine it with other animals in the habitat. You can find ways to make this fit for your own park ideas, right? This is just to give you the inspiration and to get you building and to get you making something awesome. So I I put a light in front of every single pillar. It just creates a really cool effect at night, because these lights do give a nice glow on the base of the pillar, and it's just adding many decorations to this interior to make it feel more finished. That's just really important when you're building something, add as much detail as you can stand, and as much detail as your PC or console can handle, basically. By the way, if you are enjoying this build, please don't forget to give the video a like. That helps me out a ton and just lets me know what kind of content you guys enjoy, and that I should make more of it, essentially. Now, back to adding more decorations. Here we go. So I lined the other side of the path as well, again, just because I feel like it gives it a way more finished look. And I alternated between these palm trees in the planters, in the pots, and the low Malta wall pieces. Alternating between two different decorations can be a bit of a bore. I'll say it's definitely easier to just use the same decoration, like the same planter or the same wall piece, over and over and over when you're lining something. But I've noticed in my two most recent builds that it does really help to alternate and to break it up a little bit. Maybe not so much with the wall pieces, you could argue about that. But for example, as you know, I like lining stuff with a lot of planters, and I usually just stick to one type of planter, right? So you get like this long row of a single planter type. It really helps if you alternate a little bit, or maybe just do two of one, then one of another, two of one, one of the other, and alternate it that way, just to give it a little bit more variation. Because if you keep using the same thing, you're really gonna notice that the vegetation is the same, and it's gonna be a little bit boring and feel very repetitive, which, is like a no-brainer. Like, duh, if you use the same thing over and over, of course it's gonna be repetitive, but it's something that you'll experience for yourself, and it really elevates your build to the next level if you try to get away from that a little bit. Now, the empty space between the path and the wall, I just filled in with more nature stuff. What I also realized you could have done here is you could have made it more plaza-like and added amenity buildings and stuff like that. But the way I have it figured right now as part of a greater park is, this entire entry section is lined with fences, right, on either side. So you could use that as the side wall or the back wall of other dinosaur habitats. You can just work those in there, and that way you can really see how one exhibit, you can just start with one exhibit, and from there you can branch out. You'll probably see it a little bit better at the end when I'm going to show you an overview of this entire build, and you'll see what I mean, where, oh, you can fit a habitat there, you can fit a habitat there, stuff like that. Now we finally arrived at decorating the habitat itself. Again, this particular habitat is huge, so I use that size to my advantage to work in quite a few quote-unquote mountains, really get some elevation going on in here. But I also wanted to keep like open plains, foresty areas, again, really to give the T-Rexes a more natural habitat that would be conducive to a breeding program. This is not so much about giving guests the best possible view of a dinosaur, because obviously a huge and densely vegetated habitat, as this is going to be in the end, is not the best attraction for a park, even though we've found some ways around that. In a zoo setting, you'd want to kind of shrink down the habitats so guests have a bigger chance of seeing the actual animal. But because the point here is the breeding aspect of it, I really wanted to give them the space that you would logically expect a large theropod to need. And it's just all really natural, and it's not really decorated or designed to give our guests the most optimal viewpoints into this habitat. Now, if you're going to use this design in your park and you don't really like that, you do want your guests to see your T-Rexes from multiple angles, as you build around this enclosure, you can add more viewing galleries, right? There's like this huge length of perimeter fencing that I'm now not doing anything with it because I'm not building a park around it. But if you are, you could place like 5 more viewing galleries, right? So you can give your guests more viewing opportunities to see the Rexes. Now we've arrived at actually building the real Rex nest. So we built the replica at the roundabout at the start for our guests to really get close with and study that way. But this is the real Rex nest. So this is the nest that the actual animal themselves built. And the story that I had behind it is that the Rexes maybe breed every couple of years, right? They don't breed every single year, they breed every couple of years, and every time they build a new nest for the new clutch of eggs that they're gonna hatch. So I built that nest, but I'm also going to build an abandoned nest later on. Now for the current nest, the nest that is in use at the moment, what you want to do is use the white Mediterranean rock, the smallest white Mediterranean rock, as the egg. They come from the Malta expansion, and they just look the most convincing as eggs, not just because of their super light color, but they also have one end that is really rounded. Now I'm placing a lot of other rocks all around the place because that's a resource for the Rexes in this habitat, right? When they build a nest, they need rocks to collect to construct their nest. Now this is the abandoned nest that I talked about earlier, so it's really just the shape of it, some of the rocks, but a lot of the rocks have since been moved around as well. So this is just like the bare minimum abandoned nest. Now the current nest that is in use is going to have a hyperloop station right by it so our guests can properly view it. And the story here is that, you know, every couple of years when the Rexes get ready for a new breeding cycle and to lay a new clutch of eggs and they make a new nest in a new location, that hyperloop viewing tower actually gets relocated to wherever they build the nest. Here's the overview of the build. Now you can use that blank space around the roundabout. Like I said, you can use that for animal habitats, or you can use that to place amenities and stuff like that. And here are Mom and Dad T-Rex walking around in their habitat. I really like how the monorail structure turned out. I like that it gives some height to our park. It gives us actual construction opportunities, gives that really enclosed overhead building kind of feel. But perhaps most importantly, I really like it because it looks very different from what we would build in pretty much every other area of our park, because obviously you're not going to do this all over the place, so it really sets it apart and gives it some gravitas. If our guests enter this area of the park, this attraction, they can first go to the far left and go visit the little baby T-Rexes that are in the nursery over here. And you can just imagine that if you're going for the caring T-Rex parent angle, that the parent T-Rexes would just be walking around here constantly, keeping an eye on their brood. Not gonna lie, I really like the look of this, and if you do too, give the video a like, and of course subscribe for more exhibit speed builds and other tips and tricks and inspiration for Jurassic World Evolution 2. Now that's the nursery side. If guests were to go over to the far right side, they could go into the Hyperloop, which is going to take them directly to where the Rexes built their nest. So this would be a safe viewing opportunity, a high hide, if you will, to observe the Rexes in their natural habitat and just performing natural parenting and caring behaviors. It would give our guests a look at an actual Rex nest, a replica of which they saw up close and personal earlier as they came into this area of the park. If you enjoyed this build, give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more Jurassic World Evolution 2 content. For now, thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, enjoy the game.